Hey guys, Chris with Headlight Revolution here. Behind me I've got a 2018 Chevy Silverado, and this guy brought this truck to us saying, these are the worst headlights in the world, worst I've ever driven with, I need something better. And we were more than happy to help him out. In the low beam and high beam we did the GTR Lighting HID kits, 55 watt, and we did the GTR Lighting Ultra Series fog light bulbs, and I can't wait to show you guys what it looked like against the wall, and more importantly how to get the install done so that you can get your truck as bright as this one. Let's get started. The first thing you need to do when it comes to taking this truck apart to get to your headlight housings is to remove the air filter on this side of the vehicle. On the other side you got a battery in the way, but that can usually stay, but the air filter over here just takes up so much room you got to get it out of there. So take a flat screwdriver, there's a little red locking tab on this sensor here, press in on the black part of the clip here and just pull it toward you, and we can just leave that hanging over here for a little bit. Take a 5/16 socket on a ratchet that you need. Pull that little boot toward you to get some slack here. There's a 5/16, there's two 5/16 bolts holding this lid on. All right, with that stuff loosened up, you should be able to just pop this lid up, kind of weasel it out of there. It's a tight engine bay. On some of these trucks, you're gonna have the gas engine, and that gives you a little bit more room, a little bit more maneuverability. You'll see on the bottom of this lid here, there's a hose running to what appears to be the radiator. If you get under it with a little pry tool, you just pop that retainer off. Don't forget to reconnect it when you go back through and put this thing back together. So, grab your air filter, pull it out toward you, set off to the side for now, and this housing should just kind of pry and lift out. Basically fits into these pressure fit little grommets on the bottom. Takes a little effort to get it out, but if you push it forward and then kind of pop the bottom up, it comes right out. Now we've just about got access to our bulbs. We've got a little panel in the way that we need to play with first, and then we can get those things out of there. Just to give you guys a frame of reference, we've got the GoPro here above the battery on the passenger side of the vehicle. This is the radiator, this is the fender, and this is the back of the headlight. So we're gonna be working on the back of the headlight area here. And I like to say that ahead of time just so that when we switch shots, you guys aren't wondering, geez, where am I now? Where'd they put me? So take a pry tool, reach back there. We're gonna get this plastic shield out of our way. Makes working on these bulbs so much easier. So just remove these plastic push pins here. And you'll see that you get to the back of your headlight. If you reach to the back of the headlight and grab onto this little cover, twist it counterclockwise and pull it toward you, it will come off. You can do the same thing for the high beam on the bottom. I recommend pulling this plug first, just getting it out of your way. Reach down, counterclockwise again, pull it up toward you. Now, the back of my headlight might look a little different than yours when it comes to the wiring, only because this particular truck is equipped with a Boss snowplow. To make those work, you got to do a T-harness and a bunch of extra wiring. So if you see anything weird, don't worry about it. It's not the same on your truck. But everything should function the same. Twist your stock bulb counterclockwise, press the little tab to release it, pull it toward you. Reach down and do the same for your high beam. All right, now we're going to take these caps over to the bench and we're going to drill a hole in the back of them so that we can pass our HID wiring through them. So we've got our caps on the bench. On one it says T on the top, that means the top, as in low beam. One says B, that's for bottom, high beam. They're also shaped different. Try to keep them together. One will not go in the other one, and they also take different bulbs, so you don't want to end up getting back to the truck and having the wrong bulb and the wrong cap. So the first thing we need to do is drill a 7/8 hole in the cap here. I try to center it as best I can. Should look something like this. This is just for our HID wiring grommet to pass through and get our wiring out to our ballast. You could use a hole saw, you could use a 1-inch bit if that's all you've got. Try to stay around 7/8. 1 inch does work. Any smaller will not work. Now, we've got our GTR lighting HID bulbs here. This one is 9005, so it's going to go into our low or our high beam. The first thing that we need to do is de-pin this connector. Pop this retainer off. And what you're going to need is a little like dental pick tool, something with a very fine metal point to get this done. Set that off to the side. Now make note of your wire colors. We've got red on the right here with the tabs facing up. So tabs facing up, red is on the right, black is on the left. Reach your pick tool in to the inside of the pin, press in on it gently and pull out. Now I recommend taking these little pins and bending them back out just a little bit so that they stick in there real well when you go to reinstall them. This is the most common failure we see when it comes to people having issues with their HID kit working, is they de-pin these, they press the pins in real hard, they bend them in so far that they don't stay in the connector anymore. With the de-pinning done, you can reach them, you can reach your wires through the hole here, and the grommet should be a tight fit. It should be a pretty snug fit. The reason for that is we obviously don't want any water or anything like that getting in. Should look something like this when you're all done with it. I recommend leaving your HID bulb cover on with the foam in it for this, because it's going to be banging around on your workbench a little bit while you're doing it. Now if you remember your wire orientation, red goes on the right with the pins or the tabs facing up, so reinstall it just like it came out. Black on the left, like so. Give them a little tug, make sure that they're in there secure, and reinstall your retainer. There you go. That's how you properly de-pin and re-pin an HID connector. I recommend starting with the bottom one first, so that's your high beam. Get the bottom one done, you'll have all the room in the world to reach the top one from there. If you try to go the opposite, you're going to run out of space for your hand. So at this point you can take your bulb protector off, pull a little foam spongy thing off the bottom of the base, and GTR Lighting supplies you with these wipes here, and I guarantee you if you use these wipes you're not going to have a bulb failure. These things make all the difference. So at this point try to get this thing in there without touching anything dirty, anything oily. Alright, when you finally get it lined up, give it a clockwise twist to lock it in place. Take your bulb connector, or take your power connector, and connect it to the factory bulb wiring for the high beam. So that plug that was plugged in to the bulb is now going to that red and black harness that we took our time and de-pinned on the bench. Line it up so that the red wire goes to the blue wire on the plug. I hope you can see that. If you can't, I apologize. As you can probably imagine, getting a shot in this tight quarters here is not the easiest thing in the world. Now before you continue, you're going to want to put that cover back on. Now when you get the cap back on, gently pull on your ballast wiring and your bulb connector wiring. You can actually get quite a bit of slack out of there. There's plenty of wiring in the headlight to give you a little bit more room to work with when it comes time to connect these to our ballast. So you can see I've set them off to the side now. Now I'm going to go ahead and plug our factory power connector in, because we shouldn't need to go down below anymore. And we should be okay to work on the top bulb now, the low beam. This is the exact same thing that we just did on the high beam. Pull the connector, pull the protector off there, clean the bulb up, and install it where the original low beam bulb came out of. Compared to the high beam, this one's way easier to get in place. Twist it clockwise and connect your ballast power. On this one, we're going to match the red wire to the blue wire. It should click into place real nice, just like that. Tuck that connector into the headlight and put the cap back on. Pull your slack out of that headlight just like we did for the high beam. So you can see should have plenty here to reach the ballast pretty much wherever I put it. Okay, to make this install work properly, we need the Morimoto HD relay harness and the Morimoto capacitor link. As these trucks get newer and newer and more advanced, they become harder and harder to modify. And so just buying your random run-of-the-mill HID kit on Amazon isn't going to work anymore for trucks like this. If you got something from the early 2000s, you're probably fine. But nowadays you need quality components and you need things like this to make everything work properly without strobing, flickering, or just plain out shutting off and not turning on. After doing all this work and all this effort, the last thing you want to do is have to come back in here and redo anything. We've compiled the entire kit on our website. You don't even have to think about it. We have everything you need to make this thing work just the way it should. So we're going to undo our relay harness here. Take the OEM input of the Morimoto HD relay harness, and on ours it was actually for an H11 setup, which is what this truck has on the low beam, but we're not going to be using that plug. We're going to unplug that, set off to the side, take your capacitor link, plug it into the OEM input, and plug this end into the wiring coming out of your low beam cap. Should click together real nice, just like so. Nothing to it. Now, I'm going to be setting things down, not fully in place yet. I want to get everything wired in properly before I get anything zip tied and looking pretty. I want to make sure everything's working and functional before we get too far ahead of ourselves. Two of these long wires here are going to go to the battery. You've got power and you've got ground. Nice part is they're labeled. Power obviously just goes to the positive terminal on the battery, and to get at that, we're going to take this lid off. Negative can either go to the battery, or you can ground it to the chassis anywhere you want. On these trucks, the negative battery terminal is actually like part of the adjustment mechanism for how tight it gets, so I don't know if I want to put it there. I might just secure it to the fender here. So we need to get this lid off here so that we can get to our positive terminal to make our relay harness connection. So pop this off, undo this cover here. Just lift up on it. You might want to pop these hose retainers off right here. Just gives you a little more flex. Once again, do not forget to put them back on. All right, you can get it out of the way without having to pull this bar off. On the older trucks, you had to pull this bar off every time. It looks like now it's a little bit different. So we've got a few different options here for where we can attach to. I'm just going to attach it right here on this stud, and it looks like we got a 13mm nut to do that. Grab your positive relay harness terminal, put it down on that stud, and tighten the nut back up. Now, the nice part is you don't need to do the relay harness for the high beam too. It's just the low beam. So a little bit less wiring for us to take care of. This one connection is going to do just fine. Now go ahead and take your lid, slide it back under here. There we go. Just like that. Put your hoses back on it. We want to leave everything just the way we found it. That's the goal here. Put your jump start connector back on. All right, now let's do our negative battery terminal connection. These harnesses are really top notch. They're really labeled well. They're definitely not the cheap Chinese harnesses. These things are, I mean, they look submersible even. This is the most sealed up relay I've ever seen in my life. We're gonna run that just under here. And this is just a little 10mm nut on the negative battery terminal. As you can see, I've got the negative terminal here on that stud. I've got the nut back on it. Gently tighten this up. You don't have to go crazy. There we go. Make sure the terminal's not going to spin or anything. So throughout this whole process, we've kind of had a growing wire mess going on here. We've got HID bulbs, they've got 3-4 wires coming out of them. We got a relay harness here. That's all gonna get better in the next few steps. Now we can finally start kind of cleaning things up, getting a little more direction on where we're going. On this HD relay harness, you've got one short ballast wire coming out. This is what's going to energize the low beam ballast on this side. You've also got one that's significantly longer. The reason it's so much longer is it's going to the driver's side of the vehicle, and it's going to plug into the driver's side low beam ballast and energize that when the low beam comes on. So you don't need the OEM connector on the driver's side anymore, you just use this. So at this point, I'm going to run this wiring under where the intake tube and everything's going to end up being. If you remember where that was, it kind of ran front and center here. I want it to be under that. There's plenty of stuff to zip tie to, so I don't have to worry about the wiring getting caught in anything. I'm mounting the relays right here on this AC hose, it looks like. It's either AC or power steering. Run a zip tie through the top of that. Now, keep in mind, you've got some moving parts down here. You've got a fan that's not too far away. The last thing we want to do is be bumping into that. So make sure when you go back through and tidy this up that you keep your wiring out of the fan. Take the short ballast connector, grab your GTR lighting 55 watt HID ballast, plug it into the input for the power. Should get a nice click out of it when it's there. And this is going to connect to your low beam bulb connections. Just like so. Now, I'm going to be putting these ballasts just down here. I'm going to hang them from this. So take a zip tie, pass it through. It's nice and out of the way, because remember, we got to put a big air box back in here. Last thing you want to do is get this stuff all where it belongs and then just figure out that your air box no longer fits. This is going to be your high beam ballast. I'm going to put it in the same spot as the low beam ballast. So tie it up real nice, real tight there. Take those connectors, connect them to your high beam wiring. This is the power connector for the ballast, and it goes to that connector that we depinned on the bench coming out of the high beam cap. Take your bulb connectors and connect them to the high beam. I know you can't see what I'm doing right now. I'll try to show you when I'm all done. Just like so. It's kind of going down into the abyss there. I know you can't really see what went on, but it's the same thing that we did on the low beam. So two major things need to happen right now. One, we need to make our wiring disaster look like less of one. So we need to clean all this up. We're going to zip tie it up real nice so that it doesn't give us any problems in the future. And then we need to take this long ballast extension here and just run it to the passenger side, or driver's side, sorry, and hook it up to the driver's side ballast. Other than that, we're really in the home stretch. That's it. Like, that's all you got to do. So I'm going to set this over here for now. I'm going to grab some zip ties. I'm going to put that plastic cover back on the back of the headlight. So I'm just going to tuck the wiring kind of between it and the frame of the vehicle with the pins back in and the panel up. It really retains most of the wiring that we just added to the vehicle back there. Got a little bit of extra over here. I'm going to run that down just along these radiator hoses and stuff like that. Not a big deal. More often than not, you end up with too much wiring, which is always a good problem to have. The last thing you want to do is have too little. So take any excess, zip tie it up real nice so that it doesn't get in the way of anything. At this point, you should be okay to go ahead and jump in the truck. Don't start it, but just turn the key on and turn your headlights on, turn your high beams on. Make sure that everything works just fine before you get too far putting it together. If everything works fine, which it should, go ahead and trim any excess zip tie you got. Go ahead and wrap up any loose wiring that you might have. Get this wire over to the driver's side, connect it to that ballast. You're all done. The driver's side is the exact same process when it comes to drilling the dust cover and running your wiring as this side was. The only difference is you don't have so much to take apart and you don't have to do a harness over there. You just have that one connector. It's as easy as it gets. So we've got our stock low beams pointed at the wall here, as well as our stock fog lights, just to give you guys a true A-B comparison on what exactly we've done here. In this particular circumstance, our stock bulbs put out 156 lux against the wall, which is really not much to write home about, and I understand why this customer came to us in the first place now. This isn't getting any light down the road. It's hardly enough to safely drive with, and we need to make that better. So let's see what the GTR lighting products did for this vehicle. As you can see, the difference is absolutely night and day here. We had 156 lux on the low beam stock. We now have 403 lux at 20 feet. We've almost tripled the stock light output. That is unbelievable. This guy will not have a problem seeing at night anymore. And in order to get these results, you need to use the GTR Lighting HID Kit and the GTR Lighting Ultra Series fog light bulbs. Anything less will not yield these results. Now this is what the stock high beams look like. A little bit better, but nothing to write home about. In this particular case, we've got 287 lux, and the only reason we have that is we've got a very distinct hot spot in each of the beams. You can see the dot of light in each one, left and right. Let's see what the HID looks like. Now there's a tremendous difference in high beam output here. Not only that, but we don't have a bright hot spot in the left and right anymore. We've got one big hot spot that is going to fly down the road and hit everything in its path. We've got 665 lux now compared to our stock 287. Once again, we've almost tripled our light output. That is insane, and that's why we're here. You need to use the GTR Lighting HID Kit in order to get these results. As you can see, the difference between the GTR Lighting HID Low Beam and High Beam Kit and the stock garbage that these trucks come with is absolutely night and day. So I think we definitely took care of this guy's problem. I'd love to help you with yours. We've got everything you can think of for these trucks: cargo lights, reverse lights, tail lights, turn signals, front and rear. Anything you can think of, we've got it on our website, www.headlightrevolution.com. Check out our YouTube channel, Headlight Revolution. Thank you for watching.